Transformation often sounds like a distant dream, something that requires years of struggle, sacrifice, or external circumstances to shift. We tell ourselves that maybe when the timing is right, when the opportunities come, when we have more money, or when we feel stronger, that's when life will change. But the truth is, transformation is not bound by time. It doesn't wait for permission. Transformation begins the moment you decide to shift your mindset. Think about it. Every invention, every breakthrough, every act of courage began with a single thought, a change in perspective. People who change the world are not born extraordinary. They simply see differently. They ask different questions. They choose to believe something new about themselves, about others, about the world. That choice is available to you right now. Your life is not defined by the external circumstances you face, but by the internal lens through which you see them. Two people can face the same challenge. One sees defeat, the other sees opportunity. One mindset leads to paralysis, the other to growth. The difference is not the problem. The difference is perception. The most powerful truth is this: your brain adapts to the instructions you give it. If you constantly feed it fear, scarcity, and self-doubt, your life will reflect those instructions. But if you choose to feed it courage, abundance, and possibility, your life begins to shift almost instantly. It's not magic, it's mindset. When you change your mindset, you change the questions you ask yourself. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of saying, I can't do this, you start saying, well, what small step can I take right now? That change in language changes your emotional state, your actions, and ultimately your results. So transformation isn't a distant mountain you need to climb. It's a door that opens the moment you decide to think differently. And the beauty of it is, anyone can walk through that door starting now. The world will not change for you until you change the way you see yourself within it. Change your mindset and you'll discover that life doesn't just get better. It becomes a reflection of the person you've chosen to become. That is instant transformation. 5 keynotes of the speech transformation begins with a single shift in perspective, not with external circumstances. Your mindset determines how you interpret challenges, either as obstacles or as opportunities. The brain adapts to the instructions you give it. What you feed your thoughts shapes your reality. Changing your inner dialogue from limitation to possibility instantly changes your emotional state and actions. Life transforms the moment you change the way you see yourself and your place in the world. Transformation begins with a single shift in perspective, not with external circumstances. This idea can feel almost too simple to be true, yet it is the foundation of all meaningful change. We often think that transformation is tied to milestones, graduating from a university, getting a new job, earning a certain income, or even waiting for society to recognize our worth. But what if those events are not the true catalysts of change? What if the real transformation begins the moment we allow our minds to see differently? A shift in perspective is powerful because it changes the meaning we give to the world around us. Meaning shapes our actions, and actions shape our lives. Consider how 2 people can experience the same event but live it in completely different ways. One person faces a setback and declares that life is unfair, that the world is stacked against them, and that they are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. The other person faces the exact same setback, but interprets it as a lesson, a temporary pause that redirects them toward growth and resilience. The circumstance itself is neutral. It has no built-in meaning. It is the human mind that assigns meaning, and that meaning decides whether a person remains stuck or steps into transformation. The external event didn't change, the mindset did. When we believe transformation depends on external conditions, we hand over control of our lives. We wait for the perfect job, the right partner, or the right moment, as though life owes us a particular sequence of events before we can act differently. But life rarely unfolds according to our timetable. Waiting for external conditions is like waiting for the weather to be perfect before going outside. You might never take a step. A shift in perspective allows us to act despite the conditions, to see opportunity in imperfection, and to embrace progress over perfection. History is filled with individuals who embody this truth, and innovators, leaders, and creators who transformed their lives and the lives of others did not wait for the perfect resources or timing. They started by shifting their perspective. Where others saw problems, they saw possibilities. Where others saw walls, they saw doors. The power was never in the circumstances, but in their interpretation of those circumstances. This means that the same power is available to every one of us today, regardless of where we start. A shift in perspective is not just about optimism. It is about choosing the lens through which we interpret reality. Imagine wearing tinted glasses. If the lenses are dark, the world looks dim, even on the brightest day. If the lenses are clear, the same world appears vibrant and full of possibility. The glasses didn't change the world itself, but they changed how you experienced it. In the same way, our mindset colors every interaction, every choice, and every outcome. A person who shifts from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset begins to notice opportunities that were invisible before, even though those opportunities existed all along. One of the most liberating truths about transformation is that it doesn't require permission. You don't need the world to agree with you before you change how you think. The moment you choose to reinterpret your experiences, you reclaim your agency. Suddenly, failures become lessons, criticism becomes feedback, and challenges become training grounds for growth. This doesn't mean difficulties vanish, but it does mean you engage with them from a position of strength rather than helplessness. That simple shift changes the trajectory of your actions, and your actions begin to shape a new reality. Think of the countless moments in life when you felt stuck, perhaps in a job that drained you or a relationship that no longer served you. The circumstances may have felt immovable, but the transformation began the moment you shifted perspective, when you realized that staying stagnant was also a choice, when you saw that fear of change was holding you back more than the challenge of change itself. That recognition alone was transformation in motion. You may not have taken immediate external steps, but internally the process had already begun. Transformation through perspective shift also teaches us humility. It reminds us that while we cannot control every external event, we can control our response to it. And in that response lies freedom. A person who shifts their perspective from life happens to me to life happens for me doesn't deny pain or struggle, but they reframe it in a way that empowers them. They discover strength where others might see weakness, and they move forward where others might remain frozen. So the real power of transformation is not hidden in distant achievements or grand external changes. It is accessible in the present moment. It starts the instant we choose to think differently about the challenges before us. It starts when we choose to assign new meaning to old struggles. It starts when we stop waiting for the world to change and instead decide to change how we see the world. That one simple internal decision can ignite a chain of actions that reshape our entire lives. Transformation then is not far away. It is always one perspective away. Your mindset determines how you interpret challenges, either as obstacles or as opportunities. This principle is one of the most important truths about human growth because it shows that life is less about what happens to us and more about how we respond to what happens. Every single person will face difficulties, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. The difference between those who rise stronger and those who feel defeated lies not in the size of the challenge, but in the mindset they bring to it. Challenges are universal. No one escapes them. But interpretation varies greatly. When a person with a fixed mindset encounters a challenge, their immediate response is to see it as a barrier. They might say, "This is too hard," or "I can't handle this." The problem appears immovable, and because of that belief, their actions or inaction reflect the limitation. In contrast, a person with a growth-oriented mindset interprets the same challenge differently. They might ask, "What can I learn from this?" Or "How can this difficulty help me grow?" For them, the challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. The external reality is the same, but the internal narrative transforms the experience. This interpretation shapes not only how we feel in the moment, but also the long-term trajectory of our lives. Consider two students who fail an important exam. The one with a negative mindset sees failure as evidence of their inadequacy and may even give up entirely, convinced they are not smart enough. The other with a growth mindset interprets the failure as feedback. They may feel the sting of disappointment, but they also see it as a sign of where to focus more effort, what strategies to improve, and how to approach the subject differently. Over time, this second student is far more likely to succeed, not because the test was easier for them, but because they interpreted the challenge as an opportunity to get better. Life offers endless examples of this truth. Entrepreneurs who build great companies rarely succeed without countless failures first. The difference is that they see each failure as a teacher, not a tombstone. Athletes at the highest level often endure years of defeat before they rise to success, but they interpret those defeats as preparation, as fuel, as lessons that sharpen their skills. Even in personal relationships, the mindset we bring to conflict determines whether it becomes a destructive wedge or a path to deeper understanding. Challenges never come with instructions. It is the human mind that decides whether they will shrink us or strengthen us. The way we interpret challenges is also deeply tied to the stories we tell ourselves. If our inner dialogue is full of self-doubt, we will interpret every difficulty as confirmation that we are not good enough. But if our inner dialogue is rooted in resilience and possibility, we will interpret difficulties as opportunities to prove to ourselves what we are capable of. For example, someone who repeatedly tells themselves, "I can't handle stress," will interpret even small setbacks as overwhelming. On the other hand, someone who affirms, "I am learning to handle stress better each day," will interpret the same setbacks as opportunities to practice strength. The situation does not define us, it is our mindset that does. Neuroscience even supports this idea. The brain is wired to search for meaning, and it follows the patterns we train it to adopt. If we constantly interpret challenges as threats, our brain strengthens pathways of fear and avoidance. But if we deliberately choose to see challenges as opportunities, our brain rewires to build resilience and creativity. This is why two people facing the same crisis can respond in radically different ways. The brain doesn't simply react to circumstances, it reacts to the meaning we assign to them. It is also worth noting that interpreting challenges as opportunities doesn't mean pretending difficulties don't exist. It doesn't mean toxic positivity or ignoring pain. It means acknowledging the difficulty while choosing to see what can be gained from it. Growth-oriented individuals don't deny the reality of struggle. They simply refuse to let struggle be the end of the story. They accept that pain can be a teacher, that setbacks can redirect them, and that challenges often reveal strengths they never knew they had. Every challenge has the potential to be both an obstacle and an opportunity. Which one it becomes depends on the lens we use to view it. An obstacle mindset says, "This is the end. An opportunity mindset says, this is the beginning of something new. The choice is always ours. By training ourselves to interpret challenges as opportunities, we cultivate resilience, adaptability, and a sense of purpose even in the face of adversity. Life will never stop presenting us with difficulties, but our mindset will always decide whether those difficulties break us or build us. The brain adapts to the instructions you give it. What you feed your thoughts shapes your reality. This truth explains why two people can live in the same environment, face the same conditions, and yet live lives that feel worlds apart. The difference is not in their circumstances, but in the signals they continually send to their minds. Our thoughts are not passive reflections of the world. They are active shapers of how we experience that world. Each thought is like a seed, and the brain is fertile soil. Plant seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation, and they will grow into a reality that feels restrictive and heavy. Plant seeds of courage, belief, and possibility, and they will grow into a reality that feels expansive and full of opportunities. The human brain is designed to adapt. It is constantly building new neural pathways based on repetition and focus. If you repeatedly think that you are not capable, your brain strengthens that pathway, making it easier for you to believe the same thought again in the future. Over time, this repeated message creates a stronghold, a mental pattern that feels like truth. On the other hand, when you choose to feed your brain with empowering instructions, such as I am learning, I am capable, or I can grow through this, you create and reinforce neural pathways that support resilience and confidence. The external world may not have changed, but your internal world is already transforming, and eventually your actions follow that transformation. Consider how athletes use visualization before a big performance. Long before stepping onto the field or court, they close their eyes and picture themselves succeeding. They give their brain clear instructions. This is how I move. This is how I win. This is how I execute. By doing so, they train their brain to believe the outcome before it happens, and the body responds accordingly. The reverse is also true. If someone continually imagines failure or rehearses fear, their body will follow those instructions with hesitation, uncertainty, and avoidance. The instructions we give our brain are powerful because the brain does not question whether they are helpful or harmful. It simply follows. The same principle applies in everyday life. When you wake up and tell yourself, today is going to be exhausting, your brain prepares your body for fatigue. Small inconveniences feel heavier, and your energy drains faster because your mind has already instructed your body to expect depletion. But if you wake up and say, today is going to bring me growth, your brain begins to look for evidence to support that instruction. It notices opportunities, highlights moments of learning, and energizes you to act. The external events may be identical in both scenarios, but the experience of the day shifts entirely because of the mental instructions given at the start. What we focus on expands. This means if we feed our minds with negativity, we train ourselves to see more negativity. If we feed our minds with gratitude, we train ourselves to see more blessings. A person who constantly thinks about scarcity, believing there is never enough money, time, or opportunity, trains their brain to notice lack everywhere they go. Another person focused on abundance trains their brain to see potential in situations others overlook. Both are living in the same world, but their inner instructions have created two different realities. Science has shown that the brain has remarkable plasticity, the ability to rewire itself based on experience and focus. This means that no one is permanently stuck with the thoughts they've repeated for years. Just as muscles grow stronger with exercise, thought patterns grow stronger with repetition. If you've spent years feeding your brain with fear or negativity, it is not a life sentence. You can start today with new instructions, repeated consistently, and over time your brain will adapt. It may not happen overnight, but every repetition is like a workout for your mind, building strength in the direction you choose. This is why self-talk matters so deeply. The words you use when speaking to yourself are not harmless. They are programming. When you say, I can't handle this, your brain believes you. When you say, I will figure this out, your brain also believes you. It begins to align your thoughts, emotions, and actions with that belief. This is not wishful thinking. It is the science of how the brain adapts. You give it instructions, and it adjusts its responses to match those instructions. Our reality is not shaped solely by what happens to us, but by the meaning we attach to those events through our thoughts. If you continually feed your brain instructions of strength, learning, and hope, you begin to notice opportunities and solutions you may have missed before. If you continually feed it instructions of fear, you narrow your vision until problems feel insurmountable. The choice of what instructions to give is always ours, and that choice has the power to transform how we experience life. Changing your inner dialogue from limitation to possibility instantly changes your emotional state and actions. The conversations we have with ourselves are often the most influential ones we will ever hear, yet they are also the least examined. Every day, our mind produces countless thoughts, and those thoughts become the script of our lives. If that script is dominated by limitation, statements like, I can't, I'm not good enough, or this will never work, then our lives naturally reflect those restrictions. We become hesitant, fearful, and reactive. On the other hand, when our inner dialogue shifts toward possibility, statements like, I can learn, I will find a way, or this challenge will grow me, our actions immediately begin to reflect courage, creativity, and resilience. The words we use internally act as a compass, pointing us either toward stagnation or toward growth. What makes inner dialogue so powerful is its immediate impact on emotional state. Imagine facing a difficult task. If the first thought that arises is, I'm going to fail, your body responds with tension, stress hormones rise, and you approach the task already defeated. But if the thought is, this is a chance to grow, your body responds with energy, focus, and readiness. Nothing external changed. The task is the same, but the way you spoke to yourself transformed your internal state, which in turn affects your performance. This is why athletes, leaders, and performers focus so much on mental conditioning. They know that before action comes belief, and belief is shaped by self-talk. The dialogue we hold internally also determines the limits of our imagination. When the voice in your mind is full of limitations, it narrows the scope of what you even attempt. You may never apply for the job, start the project, or pursue the dream because your inner dialogue convinced you it was impossible before you even began. But when the dialogue leans toward possibility, it expands the field of vision. You begin to see options where others see dead ends. You attempt things others would not dare, not because you are guaranteed success, but because your self-talk made the attempt feel worthwhile. And in that attempt lies growth, resilience, and sometimes extraordinary achievement. Think about how children approach challenges. A child learning to walk does not interpret falling as a reason to quit. Their inner dialogue, though not verbalized in the same way as adults, is one of possibility. They try again and again, fueled by curiosity and determination. Over time, walking becomes natural. But as we grow older, our inner dialogue often becomes critical and limiting. We convince ourselves that mistakes define us, that failure is final, and that difficulty is proof we are not capable. The truth is, the childlike mindset of possibility never leaves us. It is simply buried under years of limiting self-talk. By choosing to change the language we use with ourselves, we can reawaken that natural resilience. Changing inner dialogue does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that difficulties do not exist. It means reframing reality in a way that empowers rather than paralyzes us. For example, instead of saying, this problem is too big, you might say, this problem will take time and effort, but I can break it into smaller steps. The situation remains the same, but the shift in dialogue transforms hopelessness into strategy. Instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, you could say, I'm still learning how to do this. That small shift acknowledges imperfection without surrendering to it, leaving room for growth. These subtle changes in language create profound changes in behavior. The reason this works so effectively is because thoughts influence emotions and emotions drive actions. Negative self-talk triggers discouragement, which leads to avoidance or half-hearted effort. Positive self-talk triggers motivation, which leads to persistence and creativity. Over time, these repeated actions accumulate, shaping the trajectory of our lives. It is not an exaggeration to say that entire destinies are determined by whether someone chose to believe, I can't, or I will try. It is also important to recognize that inner dialogue is learned. Many of the limiting phrases we repeat to ourselves were not originally ours. They may have come from parents, teachers, peers, or past failures. At some point, we internalized them and began to repeat them as if they were truth. The empowering reality is that if these patterns were learned, they can also be unlearned and replaced. By consciously practicing new forms of self-talk, we retrain our minds to support us rather than sabotage us. The process requires consistency, but the effects can be immediate. When you shift your inner dialogue from limitation to possibility, you give yourself permission to act differently. Instead of freezing at the thought of failure, you begin to move, experiment, and adapt. Instead of feeling crushed by setbacks, you feel motivated to learn and improve. And because your actions change, your outcomes begin to change as well. This creates a reinforcing cycle. Possibility, focused dialogue leads to empowering emotions, which lead to effective actions, which then produce results that reinforce the belief in possibility. The cycle of limitation can just as easily be replaced with a cycle of growth. Life transforms the moment you change the way you see yourself and your place in the world. This idea is both simple and profound because it emphasizes that the starting point of transformation is internal, not external. Many people look outward for change. They wait for circumstances to improve, for validation from others, or for opportunities to appear. Yet the most powerful transformations begin the moment you alter your perception of who you are, what you are capable of, and the role you play in the world around you. Your self-perception is the lens through which every experience is filtered. And when that lens shifts, everything else begins to change. The way we see ourselves determines the choices we make and the risks we are willing to take. A person who believes they are limited or unworthy will unconsciously shrink from opportunities, avoid challenges, and remain within the bounds of what feels safe. Conversely, someone who sees themselves as capable, resilient, and deserving approaches life with curiosity and courage. They attempt what others avoid, persevere where others quit, and discover possibilities that would otherwise remain hidden. Changing your self-perception does not guarantee success, but it guarantees engagement with life in a way that opens doors to growth, learning, and fulfillment. Self-perception also influences how we interpret feedback and setbacks. When we see ourselves as competent and capable of growth, criticism becomes a tool rather than an attack. A setback becomes a lesson rather than a verdict. By contrast, if we see ourselves as inadequate, even small obstacles feel like confirmation of our limitations, and every challenge seems insurmountable. The reality is not the obstacle itself, but the interpretation shaped by our view of ourselves. The shift occurs when we recognize that our abilities, strengths, and potential are not fixed. They can evolve with effort, learning, and persistence. How we see ourselves also determines the energy we bring into our interactions and environments. A person who believes in their capacity to contribute positively radiates confidence, presence, and authenticity. Others respond to that energy, creating a ripple effect that influences relationships, work environments, and social dynamics. On the other hand, someone who doubts their own worth may inadvertently transmit hesitation, fear, or negativity, which can limit opportunities and strain interactions. Transformation begins internally, but its effects extend outward, shaping the environment and circumstances in ways that often feel like external change, when in reality the origin is within. Another powerful aspect of changing self-perception is the recognition that we are co-creators of our reality. Life does not simply happen to us, we participate in shaping it through our choices, attitudes, and actions. When you begin to see yourself as an active participant rather than a passive observer, your sense of agency expands. You stop blaming circumstances or other people for where you are and start asking questions like, what can I do differently? Or how can I contribute to the outcome I want? This shift in mindset creates an empowered approach to life in which transformation becomes a natural consequence of engaged and intentional action. Changing how you see yourself also allows you to rewrite the stories you tell about your past. Many people carry limiting narratives. I failed because I'm not smart enough. I've always struggled, or I never have what it takes. These stories reinforce stagnation and prevent forward momentum. But when you begin to reinterpret those narratives, recognizing lessons learned, growth achieved, and strengths developed, you release the weight of self-limiting beliefs. The past remains unchanged, but your perspective on it evolves, freeing you to approach the present and future with confidence and clarity. This internal transformation does not require perfection. It does not demand that you eliminate all fear, doubt, or uncertainty. It simply requires awareness, intentionality, and consistent practice. Each time you consciously choose to see yourself as capable, worthy, and capable of growth, you are reinforcing a new internal map of possibility. Over time, this new map begins to guide your thoughts, actions, and decisions naturally, creating a cumulative effect that reshapes your life. The moment you change the way you see yourself, you also change your relationship with challenges and opportunities. You begin to approach difficulties with resilience, setbacks with curiosity, and successes with gratitude and humility. You recognize that you are not defined by circumstances, achievements, or failures, but by your capacity to respond, learn, and grow. The external world may remain unpredictable, but your internal world becomes a source of stability, clarity, and empowerment. Transformation, therefore, is not something that must be earned through external conditions. It is always available the moment you choose to see yourself differently. By shifting your self-perception, you unlock a cascade of change that touches every aspect of life: your thoughts, emotions, actions, relationships, and achievements. Life begins to reflect the vision you hold of yourself, and that vision becomes the foundation for creating a life of purpose, fulfillment, and growth. Transformation is not a distant goal or a reward for circumstances aligning perfectly. It is a choice you make in every moment. When you change your mindset, feed your brain empowering thoughts, shift your inner dialogue toward possibility, and see yourself as capable and worthy, your life begins to reflect those changes. Every challenge becomes an opportunity, every setback a lesson, and every step forward a testament to your resilience. The power to shape your reality has always been within you. Change the way you think, change the way you see yourself, and you will discover that life doesn't just improve. It transforms entirely, instantly, and profoundly.